and poll the businesses that are there and find out what kind of a public-private partnership can come. And then you'll gauge whether or not your community is going to be responsive to any type of investment whatsoever. And that's it. I mean, a lot of the things that we're talking about, I think, unfortunately, we tend to look from a larger city perspective, 100,000 and up. But the net of it is, in a community of 25,000 residents, you're going to have to take their pulse and see whether or not affordable, what does affordable mean? Affordable means something different in a community of your size versus a community of 100,000 people and higher.
Dovetailing into what Tony was saying, don't try to build it all at once. It's not necessary. You could start off with a metro area just to light up downtown. Start off small, and as the demand rises, let your constituents come back to you in support of you politically, and so that you can wring it out. One of the biggest mistakes that I've observed in the industry is that commitments are made for the duration that it will take to build the network out, for the indoor coverage that it will provide, and things such as this. By reining that in and creating a demand in a centralized area, testing it, getting the constituents on board who will use it, you'll be able to gauge what the tolerance is for investment to go ahead and build out the network, and for that matter, if it's really going to be necessary. We espouse even an on-demand model to where you don't say, I'm going to give everybody indoor coverage, but you make it part of your plan or your strategy to allow them to self-identify. I need that indoor coverage from this network, and allow them to fulfill it. In this way, if out of the 25,000, 50 of them declare that they need indoor coverage, you deploy 50 devices, you've just got 100% coverage for the demand. We see too many initiatives where folks are making promises that are sky high and without understanding the cost associated with it, and this is why it's so prohibitive to deploy the networks. Taken differently, it might be extremely palatable to deploy the network, and you may find that there's both political pulse to do so as well as the dollars.
Great advice.
Playing the hardest side of Ash, one thing that he didn't mention was that if you give right of way to one company, a business company, you've now created a default monopoly. They're going to charge whatever they want to charge because there's no competition. They own it all. I'm a business person. I used to run an ISP. I'm not going into your poorer neighborhoods. I'm sorry. It's not in my best interest and my profit bottom line to go into the neighborhoods that most need this coverage. So when you talk about, well, we want it for free, there's a lot of things I want in life for free too. I also realized that if you look down Route 66, there was a time when that was the east-west highway, and when the interstate was built, then there wasn't a Route 66. And as hard as this is going to be to take for a lot of people in this room, you're going to either bite the bullet and put something in, or you're going to watch your community die. Now, my wife and I sunk a lot of our own personal money into building a network in a town of 478, 79 people. And that was something to do because we believed it was right for our community. And we actually saw growth from it. And coincidentally, the minute we did it, Verizon all of a sudden magically appeared and put in broadband in our little tiny community before they did it in the multi-million-dollar communities of Woodstock and Stowe. So that should give you an idea. But the reality is, you're either going to pay attention to the problem or you're not. And you can look all through this country and you can find towns that are boarded up and closed down because somebody didn't pay attention to the problems that needed to be.
I think we got time for one more question. Yeah, please. Identify yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Jim Kennebrew, and Ash, I have a question for you. When's the project in the city of Cambridge complete, and what's the measurement of success?
That's a great question. We are in the process of completing our feasibility study right now, which will lay out some of these goals completely. The project definition, though, taking from the RFI that we've got kind of mothballed while we complete the feasibility study, 95% outdoor coverage of inhabited areas of Cambridge. That's what we're looking for. You start to see an exponential cost increase when you hit about 75 to 80%. When you start to get there in a city like Cambridge, you get out kind of into the wealthier western part of the city, and all of a sudden you're installing an access point to serve a house. So we realized that 100% coverage is a laudable goal, but it's one that's very difficult to meet. So that's why we're going for 95. The other thing is that we're defining it as to-the-street coverage, because the expense to get it indoors is so high that to the city it's prohibitive. However, for a $50 customer premise equipment device, you'll be able to get it off the street and into the house. And that's actually part of what we define in our RFI is that for the inhabited areas, they need to be able to get in-home coverage using a CPE device. How do we measure our goals? The brief definition is reaching that. We have not defined with a service provider yet, or in moving through the RFI process to engage the service provider what the goals are. But I would say in brief, it is a successful adoption rate. And what our feasibility study, the one part that's not complete about it right now, is demographic analysis. So I can't speak to that to the depth that I would like to in telling you how many people we expect to have a significant uptake on this. What we're doing is we're doing a horse trade. We have a Metro Access network, so you have free access to the network for free public access at the street level with the opportunity to sell the value-added services. So we're kind of cutting to the chase and saying that you can't use a CLEC business model here. You have to think through what it actually means to be an ILEC and what your value-added services will be. And I think that successful uptake of the value-added services will really define the success of the network from the systems integrator's perspective.
All right, thanks. I'm afraid we're running out of time for questions. I'm going to ask you if you've got additional questions. I'm going to actually ask the speakers to hang out here and if just come up during the break and ask them some questions. But I'd like to thank Tony, Michael, Ash, and Ken